Look, I'm going to be straight with you. What I'm about to share will fundamentally change how you see every human interaction for the rest of your life. Your father didn't teach you this. Your teachers sure as hell didn't. And most men will go to their graves never understanding it. 500 years ago, a man named Niccolo Machiavelli wrote down some of the most dangerous truths about human nature ever documented. Truths so uncomfortable that his book was banned by the church, whispered about in political courts, and feared by kings. But here's the secret no one tells you. Machiavelli wasn't just writing about politics. He was writing about you, about me, about the games people play every single day, at work, in love, in friendships. And if you don't understand these games, you're not just behind, you're prey. It begins with a curse, the curse of the overthinker. You know it well, lying awake at night replaying a conversation, dissecting every word, every gesture, wondering what they really meant when they said that, rewinding the moment you stayed silent, wishing you had spoken. Everyone tells you to stop overthinking. They laugh, dismiss it as weakness. But what if I told you the overthinker isn't cursed? What if I told you they're simply unfinished? Psychologist Carl Jung once wrote that what society calls pathology is often misunderstood potential. Overthinking is not a defect, it's raw awareness, untrained, unrefined, turned inward until it devours itself. But if integrated, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes foresight. This is the first dangerous truth. The person who sees too much is not broken. They are in training. Consider the thinker lying awake at night. Every memory replays, every possibility branches. It feels like drowning in thoughts. But in reality, the brain is running simulations. It's scanning patterns, detecting contradictions, constructing alternative futures. Where others see surface, the thinker sees layers. Where others move blindly, the thinker feels undercurrents. For years, this feels like torment. But in the right moment, in crisis, in betrayal, in the moment illusions collapse, this torment crystallizes into clarity. Jung called this individuation, the integration of shadow and self. Nietzsche called it the moment of becoming, when the fragmented soul unites. Kierkegaard called it despair that births authenticity. Different words for the same phenomenon, the day the overthinker awakens. That awakening often comes through pain, a betrayal that strips away illusions, a failure so sharp it pierces the old narrative, a crisis that forces the thinker to stop doubting and start trusting what they see. And when that moment comes, everything changes. The thinker no longer apologizes for their awareness. They no longer dismiss their perceptions as paranoia. They begin to trust the quiet voice that whispers, "Something is wrong here." What once felt like overthinking becomes intuition sharpened by years of rehearsal. They spot lies before they're spoken. They anticipate moves before they're made. They see the wolf in sheep's clothing before anyone else notices the teeth. And suddenly, the same people who mocked them for thinking too much are unsettled by their accuracy. This is why awakening is dangerous. Not because the thinker becomes aggressive, but because they become unshakably clear. And clarity, in a world built on illusions, is a weapon. Watch what happens socially when someone awakens. Friends who once relied on their compliance begin to feel uneasy. The manipulative partner realizes their tricks no longer work. Colleagues who thrived in office politics sense a threat. The thinker does not fight. They do not argue. They simply see. And that seeing alone destabilizes entire systems. Manipulators operate like predators. They rely on blindness. They survive by deception. To be around someone who sees through them is unbearable. It's like a vampire standing in the sun. So they retreat. They ghost. They collapse. Not because the thinker destroyed them, but because they can no longer operate in their light. Relationships change too. Some end abruptly. The gaslighting partner finds themselves calmly exposed. The guilt-tripping parent discovers their old tactics no longer land. the circle of friends who thrived on pretense fractures. But not all relationships dissolve, some deepen. Healthy friends adapt, relieved they no longer have to hide. Genuine partners grow more authentic. Family members once hidden behind masks begin to speak with honesty. The awakened thinker does not destroy connections. They filter them. The false fall away, the true remain. And yet, this filtration is lonely. To awaken is to step into solitude. Not because no one remains, but because fewer can walk with you. Kierkegaard described it as the despair of authenticity, to live in truth when most prefer illusion. But what begins as loneliness transforms into sovereignty. The thinker learns to carry solitude not as a wound, but as freedom. In the workplace, the shift is equally profound. The thinker, once quiet in meetings, begins to speak with calm precision. They point out inefficiencies no one else dared name. They predict outcomes with eerie accuracy. They propose solutions stripped of politics, and in doing so, expose the politics themselves. Some colleagues admire them, others resent them. Bosses either elevate them or push them out. But in every case, the thinker is no longer invisible. They have shifted from pawn to strategist. Here lies the paradox. Clarity protects, but it also isolates. To see through illusion is to walk among those still asleep. Some will follow you, others will fear you, a few will despise you, and there is danger here. Because clarity is power, and power corrupts. The thinker who awakens without ethics risks becoming manipulative themselves. They can read insecurities and exploit them. They can dismantle illusions not to liberate, but to dominate. History is littered with such figures, leaders who began as visionaries and became tyrants. Machiavelli himself warned rulers that perception was more powerful than truth. Nietzsche cautioned that he who stares into the abyss risks becoming a monster. Jung insisted that shadow integration must be paired with moral grounding. Awakening alone is not enough. Without compassion, clarity becomes cruelty. Without restraint, foresight becomes manipulation. Without ethics, strategy becomes tyranny. The healthiest awakened thinkers embody what I call the balanced warrior. They carry perception like a blade, but they sheath it in discipline. They know they could destroy, but they choose not to. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, understood this. He wielded immense power, yet wrote endlessly about humility and restraint. His clarity was not for domination, but for stewardship. The balanced warrior uses clarity as shield, not as sword, to navigate, not to conquer, to liberate, not to enslave. Over time, awakened thinkers evolve into living truth detectors. In meetings, their silence unnerves liars. In relationships, their calm gaze disarms manipulators. In crises, their foresight steadies chaos. They may not seek leadership, but leadership often seeks them. People feel instinctively that they cannot be deceived, that in a world of masks, they are unmasked. Some channel this into creativity, writing, art, philosophy. What once was torment becomes fuel. Dostoevsky turned paranoia into novels. Nietzsche turned despair into philosophy. Their depth was not a curse, it was material. Others channel it into business, strategy, or guidance. They become advisors, consultants, therapists, teachers, not because they know more facts, but because they see more truth. Either way, they are no longer the hesitant, mocked overthinker. They are sovereign. So what is the final lesson of all this? That thought is not a curse. It is a weapon. Overthinking is simply thought turned inward until it spirals. Awakening is when thought is turned outward, sharpened into clarity. The thinker who integrates no longer drowns in awareness. They navigate with it. They no longer hesitate endlessly. They choose with precision. They embody conscious sovereignty, the ability to live fully aware without being destroyed by awareness. And perhaps this is not just psychology, but evolution. In a world of propaganda, manipulation, and deception, those who can see through illusion are not burdens. They are the future. immune to gaslighting, resistant to false authority, difficult to control. This is why society ridicules overthinkers before they awaken, because once they do, they are no longer manageable. So remember this: if you have ever been told you think too much, you were never broken. You were training. Every sleepless night, every anxious spiral, every conversation replayed was sharpening a blade you didn't know you had. And when the moment comes, when crisis strips away illusions, you will not collapse. You will awaken. You will become what Kierkegaard called authentic, what Jung called whole, what Nietzsche feared and admired, a sovereign mind. Your thoughts are not your weakness. They are your strength. They are your weapon. Write it down. Say it out loud. Let it echo in your bones. I no longer doubt what I see. My thoughts are my strength. History has always been written by the loudest voices, by kings, conquerors, priests, and politicians. But beneath the noise of armies and empires, there was always another current, quieter, harder to detect. The current of the observers, the feelers, the ones who didn't carry swords, but memories. Carl Jung saw them in his clinic. But if you step back far enough, you'll see them in every era. In the Middle Ages, they were the healers accused of witchcraft because they knew too much about herbs, the human body, and the unspoken wounds of villagers. In ancient courts, they were the advisors who said little but saw everything. The whispers behind the throne, the micro-expressions of rivals, the trembling hands of traitors. Even further back, in the survival camps of prehistory, they were the ones who noticed which berries made someone sick, who remembered the subtle change in an animal's tracks, who felt tension ripple through the tribe before violence erupted. Society never knew what to call them, too sensitive, too strange, too dangerous, and so they were pushed down, mocked, silenced, burned. But the truth survived, carried in silence, until betrayal forced it to awaken. Jung's awakened empath isn't just a clinical phenomenon, it's an evolutionary milestone. For thousands of years, brute strength ruled. The predator thrived, the manipulator rose, the tyrant conquered. But here's what every predator forgot. The observer was always there, watching, recording, waiting. The transformation Jung documented, the empath snapping into integration, is not just personal, it's civilizational. It marks the shift from unconscious suffering to conscious sovereignty, from silent endurance to strategic choice. Think about it. An integrated empath doesn't just protect themselves, they destabilize entire systems built on lies. Families collapse when the absorber stops absorbing. Workplaces shift when the quiet one finally speaks the truth everyone avoided. Nations tremble when citizens stop internalizing guilt and instead recognize the patterns of manipulation at scale. This is why Jung called it terrifying, not because it was destructive, but because it was unstoppable. Once someone learns to trust their own perception completely, there is no going back. Nietzsche wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe, but no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself." That is what the empath's awakening truly is. Ownership. Ownership of perception, of intuition, of power. And ownership spreads. One transformed empath teaches another by example. One person who refuses to be gaslit inspires a dozen others to rethink their boundaries. Like sparks catching in dry grass, the awakening moves silently until the entire landscape of human relationship is on fire. Jung's private notes reveal his fear. If these abilities were ever systematized, they could be weaponized. But here's the paradox. Every weapon can also be a shield. Every strategy of manipulation can also become a strategy of liberation. That's the razor's edge the awakened empath walks. To feel everything without drowning, to see everything without growing bitter, to carry power without needing to use it destructively. Maybe this is why history repeats. Not because people never learn, but because the sensitive learn too late. But Jung's case studies whisper something else. Maybe this time the cycle can break. Maybe the era of awakened empaths is not a footnote in psychology, but the beginning of a new human archetype. If you've ever been told you're too sensitive, remember, sensitivity is data. It's pattern recognition. It's intelligence. And when intelligence is paired with courage, it becomes evolution. The predator's age is ending. The age of conscious perception has begun. So here's the final question Jung would want you to ask yourself. Will you keep absorbing everyone else's pain until you shatter? Or will you honor what you see, what you feel, and what you already know, and step into the clarity that has been waiting for you all along? Because once you do, you will never be the same, and neither will the world around you. If you've made it this far, it means something inside you recognizes the truth of what you've just heard. That spark you feel right now is not entertainment, it's recognition. You've always known you were different. You've always noticed what others miss. You've always felt what others try so hard to ignore. And maybe, until today, you doubted yourself for it. Maybe you let the world convince you that your perceptions were flaws, that your boundaries were selfish, that your sensitivity was weakness. But deep down, you knew that seeing more, feeling more, remembering more was never a curse. It was your calling. This is why I need you to act. Not later, not tomorrow, but right now. Because transformation is not a spectator sport. Awakening demands participation. If you've ever felt invisible, write it in the comments. I see everything. If you've ever been underestimated, write, I am no longer blind. And if you've reached the point where you trust your perceptions more than anyone else's approval, write, I see you, but I don't need you. Your words will do more than leave a digital footprint. They will mark your declaration of awakening, a line in the sand between who you were and who you are becoming. And you're not doing it alone. This community is filled with others like you, people who have lived as emotional shock absorbers, people who have carried the silence of generations, people who are finally stepping into their clarity. Subscribe, not because it helps an algorithm, but because it keeps you tethered to a conversation that society has tried to silence for centuries. Every video here is not just information, it's reinforcement. It's the reminder you'll need when the world tries to pull you back into doubt. Share this message with someone you know is ready, because awakening spreads. One person trusting their intuition creates ripples in entire families, workplaces, and social circles, and those ripples matter more than you can imagine. The truth is this: manipulators, predators, and abusers don't fear strength, they fear perception. They fear being seen for what they are. And the more of us who awaken, the less power they hold. So let this be your turning point. Let this be the moment you stop absorbing and start choosing. Write your declaration below. Subscribe so you don't drift back into silence. And if this message burned in your chest as you listened, share it, because someone else out there is waiting for their clarity event. And this might be the catalyst. You're not just watching a video, you're participating in an evolution. And from this moment on, you don't walk into that awakening alone.